To all of you, very good to be here with you. What a beautiful part of the world. I just flew up earlier this morning and I wanted to firstly thank Coffs Harbour City Council for hosting this conference in a wonderful place that attracts an audience that's inside, and then of course all the stalls, product placement that I saw outside. What a wonderful kind of gathering of people who participate in the broad industry of waste. Is the Mayor here, Denise Knight? Hello, Denise, if you're there. I can't see a hand, but I want to thank the Council for hosting again, and all the sponsors, of which there are a number that are written up in the pages of the event today. So look, I am very pleased to be here, thank you. I know you are the biggest conference that comes together and brings all of those parts of government, industry, not-for-profit, that touch on waste across our community in New South Wales and more broadly nationally. And I did want to first, before I start, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. Let me start by sharing a bit of a secret with you. It's a wonderful program that has been fantastic for our environment. It has created lots of jobs across New South Wales, in particular regional areas, and it has created a new fundraising opportunity for community groups, for sporting groups and for charities across our state. Do you know what I'm talking about? Well, of course I'm talking about the Container Deposit Scheme, Return and Earn. And as of Sunday night, if you're not following the numbers that are coming through that system, we have more than 300 million drink containers that have been returned through the reverse vending machines, over-the-counter collection points and automated depots. 300 million eligible containers. Now, no doubt some of those would have been littered in our beautiful environment. Some of them would have been destined for landfill, and so we are 6 months into this program, and I wanted to share for the first time some of the insights into this program as it's been rolled out across our state. 80% of the volume of the scheme is through reverse vending machines that many of you would have seen at shopping centre car parks. There are more than 788 reverse vending machines across the state, and there are more to come. The demand for depositing of those eligible containers across New South Wales is so big that at our most population sites across New South Wales, those machines are emptied not twice, 3 times, but sometimes 4 and 5 times a day to keep up with the demand for that processing of those eligible containers. Now, I'm the first to admit, as Minister on behalf of the government, that the scheme was a bit slow to get out of the blocks, but it is gradually building and building, and I consider that, like most things in life, it is steady as you go. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and the pace has continued to accelerate to an average, in fact, of over 3 million drink containers through the scheme every day. Let me assure you that the scheme has the strong backing of the government, it has staying power, and I firmly believe that this is the right scheme for the right time for New South Wales. Queensland and the ACT will soon have their own container deposit schemes, and of course once Western Australia gets up and running, Victoria will be the only state that is the odd person out across mainland Australia. But like any very large project that has been run for the first time at the level of the technological edge that we are running this program, there's a significant amount of work every day to keep it functioning properly. And for example, 1 week it was the accelerated rollout of new drivers on the mid-north coast. Another week it was a dust storm that had caused dirty equipment, or it could simply be a public holiday, which we welcome because large volumes tend to come back through the system. There's a massive surge in demand through our reverse vending machines. They are daily challenges. But it is clear that the customer experience is getting better and better, and people are returning, particularly to our reverse vending machines, in large numbers. It's becoming a habit I've observed, because I follow this very closely every day, for many more people across our state to deposit their empties and either take the cash or donate to their favourite charity. Improving the flow of accurate and timely information to the community is one of the things that I ask about very often. And I have bi-weekly meetings about the container deposit scheme. As we were rolling out, you can imagine we are in communication with the scheme and network operator every day. To that end, about timely information, one of the good features of the scheme is the My Tomra smartphone app. Now, if you're not familiar with it, it provides live status updates for the reverse vending machines. So before you leave home for that purposeful visit to your reverse vending machine, you're going to know whether it's open, whether it's full, whether it's been emptied, or it's heading in the direction of being emptied, so that you are going to have a fruitful visit. The app also enables users to receive electronic recycling refunds and to easily locate nearby collection points. Now, as many of you would know, the Return and Earn scheme works with existing anti-littering programs such as our Hey Tosser program and the Waste Less Recycle More Litter Grants program. And these initiatives will contribute, as Return and Earn will, to the goal of the government to reduce litter volume in New South Wales by 40% by 2020. Now, some of you here will be close to the scheme, you're participants in it as councils, you may be an operator, you may fulfil one of those roles. But for those of you who don't know and aren't as close to it as we are, there are two functions to the scheme as it's been rolled out in New South Wales. There's the scheme coordinator and a network operator. The scheme coordinator, a consortium, Exchange for Change, is responsible for the financial management oversight of the scheme to give the integrity to the money flows, which amount to the many millions of dollars every day. The network operator, Tomra Cleanaway, of course, sets up and runs the collection points. Exchange for Change and Tomra Cleanaway have to make sure that the container deposit scheme is easy and is convenient for our community use across New South Wales. And we are committed as a government, together with the network operator and the scheme coordinator, to ensuring that the scheme meets the community's needs. And that has to be whether you're in Coffs Harbour, as beautiful as it is, and the other beautiful parts of the state, whether it's Carlingford in metropolitan Sydney, whether it's Cowra, or anywhere else in New South Wales, it has to work for you with a quality customer experience. I'm particularly proud of the fact that Return and Earn has created new opportunities for charities and community groups to fundraise, and we're seeing that grow over time as we have our local schools, our local scouts groups wake up to the opportunities that are there for them to fund their own local projects for their own benefits. For example, St Vincent de Paul and Surf Life Saving New South Wales are providing collection point services in New South Wales as well. We've got donation partners that are a key part of the scheme. So far we've had Cancer Council, we've had Surf Life Saving New South Wales and Planet Ark amongst that mix that you'll see appearing on the reverse vending machines for customers to make that choice instead of taking the voucher to donate their 10 cents refund too. And the community recently used the reverse vending machines to donate over $6,000 to the Tathra bushfire appeal to support affected residents in that region as they made through a very difficult time for their local community. Now, naturally, there have been diversions of those eligible containers from curbside recycling, but I want to reinforce that curbside recycling remains a very important part of our waste management system. And Return and Earn was designed from its very infancy to complement curbside recycling, not to compete with it. Containers still continue to be placed in our curbside recycling system, which for most people remains the most convenient recycling method for containers they typically use in the home. And that could be drink containers that, yes, are eligible for Return and Earn, that had that 10-cent deposit return connected with them, or other containers, of course, that are not covered by the scheme, and some of those include wine bottles and large flavoured milk containers, which are not part of the scheme because they're not defined by the fact that we find traditionally many of those kind of containers in our communities when we're out on the go. And it is consistent in choosing certain containers that are eligible and others that are not, and having a companion in the curbside recycling, with our aim as a government to minimise the impacts of the scheme on existing curbside services. The Container Deposit Scheme legislation contains specific provisions for material recovery facilities, operators, and I call them MRFs because all of you would understand, of course, what that means, and councils to share in those refunds they're collecting on behalf of their community ratepayers. It's estimated that the additional revenue stream from eligible containers processed through curbside recycling could be as much as $100 million per annum. MRFs are required to enter into refund sharing agreements with their local councils by the 1st of December of this year, and they will not be able to claim the processing refund after the 1st of December unless they have a refund sharing agreement in place. The New South Wales Government is already providing support to local councils and MRFs to prepare for those refund sharing negotiations. And as a minister, it is that happy coincidence of being local government minister as well as environment minister to make sure that I can make both of those agencies of government work with you really well to ensure that we hit that deadline of the 1st of December. Through local government, we've commissioned economic modelling to review the revenue sharing scenarios, and that's going to inform the negotiations that will need to take place ahead of the 1st of December. But at the end, each company and each council has to strike a deal. And for those that are members of local councils here, and for those that are waste or MRF operators, I urge you to that end ahead of the 1 December deadline. One of the great benefits of Return and Earn is that it is providing an extra source of revenue at a time when that ban on low-grade recyclables, contaminated recyclables in China, is forcing the international waste industry to change its practices. And I'm going to talk about that in a little while. I did want to mention before I get to that issue, which I'm sure is going to frame your discussions tomorrow and throughout the conference, that reducing litter remains and will continue to be an important part of my job in delivering on the government's target. That target is 44% of litter volume to be reduced, and eligible containers that are part of the container deposit recycling scheme are an important part of that target that we have. But we haven't forgot the remainder, of course. There's 56% of New South Wales litter volume, and that's made up of takeaway food containers, newspapers, cigarette butts. And I know the single biggest littered item that I found on Clean Up Australia Day in my own electorate, which includes Bondi Beach, were the stubs from cigarette butts. And I just absolutely amazed the local school kids who came with me to do that exercise down in Bondi Beach. It was a real revelation for them that firstly that was the most voluminous piece of litter that they picked up from Bondi Beach, but indeed that was litter, and that many people who smoke don't realise that it is part of the litter that is voluminous in our environment. So we need to focus on that other 56% as well. Since 2014, the Environmental Protection Authority has awarded $8.3 million to councils and to community groups to reduce litter in our litter hotspots. And there are many like Bondi Beach in the electorate which I represent across the state. The average litter reduction in hotspots through grants up to 2017 has been about 60%. Now that's a pretty impressive result, but clearly there's more to do. And partly through these grants, in 2016-17, the volume of takeaway food litter has reduced by 17% since our baseline, which was 2013-14. We used 2013-14 as our baseline for measuring against the Premier's priority to reduce litter by 40% by 2020. So I said it is a strong result. It shows that we've got buy-in by local councils. I know my two local councils are heavily invested in rolling out those programs across the area I represent. Also to businesses, we know, supporting that, and community groups. And it's only with those three important parts of our community that we're going to be able to reduce that 56%. EPA, I encourage along to, provide that funding to make that difference to supporting the on-ground work, the local community group work that's done to make sure that we all deliver on that target. And it's really interesting if you look at the data that we have on the number of people who are reporting littering from vehicles to our EPA system. In April of this year, the 30,000th litter reporter registered through that system, and the EPA received its 40,000th litter report. They're big numbers. The EPA has now issued over 28,000 fines for littering from a vehicle based on that community reporting. So there's a real sense of community responsibility toward this. Only 2 to 3% of those fines have been contested, and it shows the veracity of the reports. And in my former role, I was Attorney General of the state, and I can say that that's a pretty outstanding conviction rate. It's something that an attorney would never achieve. But it does show that buy-in, and I wanted to commend everybody in the community for delivering on that great result. The TOSSA campaign has been relaunched this year, you would have seen. It's just finished its bout of media burst. I hope you've seen it. It's been TV, radio, online, and you'd see we've taken another tack there where it says basically littering is on you. There is no excuse. And you've seen the visages or the faces of people where litter has come back to rest on their face, trying to make that visual point that there's absolutely no excuse for littering and you have a responsibility. It will come back to you. It has had a 94% approval rating when it's been sorted through, and I think that enviable level of acclamation, understanding, visibility just shows how welcoming our community is to that little reminder of how they have individually, as ratepayers of individual citizens, to actually sign up to the responsibility they have every day in everything they do. So let me return now to the issue of dumping and recycling, and as I said, I want to talk a little bit about the Chinese sword issue that we've got. But firstly to illegal dumping and the challenges that poses for us across the state. It is a difficult and vexed issue for state governments, for local governments, for people across our local community. Sometimes in my electorate I will get calls with people saying, look, there's something dumped outside of my house by somebody careless. What do I do about it? And it causes a great deal of distress to people when that's not readily moved on. There are problems, of course, for very good operators, of which you all are here, and the industry who, go out of your way to comply with the law, not only in its letter but in its spirit, and you do the right thing. So to address some of the issues and set a policy framework which we can all sign up to and work from, we released in February this year the illegal dumping strategy. It commits $65 million to make our state cleaner by 2021. Why do we do this? Well, it's, a serious health issue for our community. Are the consequences of illegal dumping in all its forms? Is it a serious environmental issue? And so the strategy had to be, I was very strong on this with the department, we had to back it with very serious, ambitious targets and a significant number of government dollars to make sure that we can cut that rate of illegal dumping across the state by 30%. It does build on other work you'd be familiar with. It outlines key actions for combating illegal dumping. Education is an important part of that. Like It's On You, with our littering campaign, there's a lot of word of mouth we have to do to explain that what you might put on your local pavement thinking it might go away and the council might pick up is actually not an impact only on your neighbours but beyond to your broader community. We need to do more to educate people, to take them along the journey when it comes to illegal dumping, through partnerships and through strong enforcement. They're all the parts of a good strategy. It will be delivered by the EPA with local governments, with charities, community groups. And how are we going to do that? Well, there are three ways I wanted to touch on today. One is through our specialised RID squads, which work very closely with our local councils. That helps local governments fight across regional areas to catch more offenders, to identify the culprits. There's $3 million for public land managers and community groups to participate. And very importantly, there's $1 million for our local Aboriginal land councils to clean up dumping hotspots, install barriers and surveillance equipment where they have the know-how, expertise and insight that we need to bring to the table. Since 2013, Waste Less Recycle More initiative has provided $8 million for 148 projects that prevent illegal dumping and clean up waste, and it has resulted, I'm pleased to say, in thousands of tonnes of illegal dumped waste being cleaned up, the installation of signs which remind people that it is illegal, it is dumping, it is criminal, and gates to actually prevent that behaviour happening. And those grants help us work with all our partners to tackle the unsightliness and the dangerousness that I've said that often comes with dumping waste at a local community level as well. Just a couple of weeks ago I announced in Bondi Junction, which is a big kind of community centre that's part of my electorate, $1 million to one of the local councils there to do a better job of what they're doing in terms of targeting their hotspots. So I was pleased to be a part as a local member together with an MP that shares an adjoining electoral boundary with me to be the benefactor of a competitively contested grant that council was a beneficiary of. We also need to focus on innovative approaches. You know, the use of drones to be able to identify illegal dumping. That's a really important part of what we do to bring light on things that we can't see ourselves, but if we have that aerial view, we can. And I think, again, to build understanding in our local communities, which is what I do as a local member, to talk about, you know, what you may consider as just inconvenience is actually a dumping, both an environmental and health risk to your neighbours and your broader community that you love, that you want to invest in. Research that I've looked at, because I was curious as to what actually causes illegal dumping, and it's not one single factor, of course. It can be convenience. You know, it's out of my house, onto the front verge. It's the opportunity to make some money because you're not paying for the fees that you should be to dump that waste legally and safely. It's an unwillingness to pay for whatever reason, or just a general uncaring attitude towards community. The fact is, it isn't just about cutting corners. It is about criminal activity at its worst element. It's a risk to our community for their welfare and for our future generations who want a cleaner environment for which we want them to enjoy. So we do have a boost to our illegal dumping strategy. There's money behind the policy. There is a statewide illegal dumping database. Many of you will be familiar with that. It's called RID Online. It's a tool for all public land managers and state and local governments to tell us where the dumping hotspots are, what is dumped, where it's dumped, and it's going to help us address the hotspots even better, together with those sustained and coordinated campaigns that we're going to fund you to participate, originate and roll out. So on to China. Well, as I briefly mentioned before, for some of you who don't know, how could you have missed it? Of course, we know that China has been, till this point, the biggest importer of contaminated recycling material in the world. An estimated 30 million tonnes of waste each year from not only Australia but across Europe and many other countries. And we've known this issue has been looming for some time. It is not a new issue, but China has finally enforced that policy, forbidding the importation of 24 types of waste, and of course it introduced very strict contamination limits for other waste. It effectively bans the import from Australia of an estimated 1.25 million tonnes of recyclable material every year. The China decision has not only reduced export opportunities for recyclable material, it's also caused our global commodity markets to plummet, with sharp reductions being experienced for mixed plastic and mixed paper. And it's having real financial impacts, of course, on our MRFs, flow-on consequences for our curbside recycling services in councils across New South Wales. Our government, my government, is committed to protecting what is a very strong and proud history and commitment we have as a state to recycling. As I mentioned, curbside recycling and those bins have been in place across our communities since the mid-1990s. And we've had 20 years of very good waste recycling habits through that initiative. 63% of the state's waste was recycled in 2014-15 through curbside recycling. So I don't want to see that decades of recycled commitment, goodwill, education in our community to be impacted. It has been supported, of course, by Wasteless Recycling More, and that commitment needs to be reinforced. I wanted to thank those of you who are here today who met with me on the 5th of March. We brought together representatives across New South Wales. It was a very long table. You all came in equal order of goodwill, and I want to thank you again for that. It was about how we help you, help us to have a collaborative solution to the impasse that we have. And I did hear those concerns. We then acted very quickly with me going to Cabinet and seeking an approval with a release of a one-off package of $47 million, the largest package of supports of any state, to ensure that we can reinforce, maintain our strong commitment to curbside recycling. But equally, and this is where there is the opportunity with this event that has happened, to promote industry innovation. I believe the package is comprehensive. It's worthwhile remembering that, and I'm going to reinforce this again, that it is an opportunity for us to embrace other technologies and other practices to build our markets for better recycling product and materials. It is a wake-up call. It is an opportunity we must all seize. So what does that package enable us to do? Many of you have probably worked through the fine detail. I know you've been working with local councils, you've been working with the Office of Local Government and with the EPA on this already, and I commend you for that. There is money in that package to offset some extra costs associated with curbside recycling collection, subject to guidelines that we put in place. There are improved council tendering processes. We want to build the production and use of recycled products across our community. And there's going to be further community education to recycle curbside recycling contamination. I'm strongly of the opinion, personally myself, that that last bit about community education is such an important part of what we must do better at. I think of my recycling bin, and I've always been a strong recycler, but I take even a more keen interest because I have that knowledge of what goes in that yellow bin and what does not. Some people in our communities don't know what should go in and what's not. And if it's anything like your bin, although you're practitioners and professionals, sometimes the only guidance you get as to what goes in is what's imprinted or embossed in the top of that yellow bin, which doesn't tell you sometimes what you can put in. It might tell you what you can't put in, and it doesn't differentiate between lids and containers. So there's a measure of responsibility we have as a professional part of this community to help our local community members who want to do the right thing know how they can do the right thing and help them understand how that's possible, and it's quite simple. The package also addresses that innovation part of what we need to do lots of. There's about $5 million to support a co-investment in infrastructure projects to improve the quality of recycled material produced by our waste facilities and to reduce the amount of waste that's left at the end of the recovery process. And then there's the $5 million to fund grants and programs that identify new uses for recyclable materials and increase the production and use of recyclable products. To ensure that curbside recycling collections continue, the government stands willing and ready and does continue to assist industry, local councils, by considering temporary variations in stockpiling limits. It will be on a case-by-case basis, where it can be demonstrated that the risk to environment and health can be managed properly. But by allowing those temporary stockpiling limits to increase, I think, and addressing the financial pressures on material recovery facilities, we can do something in the short term. But it doesn't address the underlying problems, which are, of course, our reliance on other countries to manage our waste, and the vulnerability, which I've mentioned, which we don't want to embed in our recycling at curbside. to market changes and market forces. To that end, the New South Wales Government established an intergovernmental task force. It's chaired by the EPA, comprises 10 other agencies from across the New South Wales Public Service. Don't worry, I'm going to keep them nimble and focused. We want to progress a short, medium and long-term response to national sword in partnership with all of you. I do want them to think about the medium to long-term solutions because I want us to be a leader as the best state in what we can do around the issue of innovation, more recyclable material being produced from our recycling stream and more recyclable product into our markets. We want to examine how we're going to do that better. We want to develop a circular economy policy for New South Wales. We want to streamline approvals in the operation of new and expanded recycling options and facilities across our state. Now, that task force is going to work closely with industry and local government reference groups that are going to soon be established. We're going to work with the Commonwealth Government and other states and territories to progress national solutions. We're going to take care of our backyard in the way that we know best as the best state, but we're going to obviously work with our counterparts where this is an issue and with the federal government. And of course, you might have noticed or observed, I think it was Friday week back, we met as a group of environment ministers together with the federal minister to discuss this very issue. We met in Melbourne, we made some pledges, but make no mistake, we will and continue to support the national efforts, but that's not going to delay or hamper our efforts on the ground in New South Wales. Essentially, the message that I have to deliver to you is that this is a hiccup. This is a challenge we are going to embrace, that the government is optimistic about, and we will embrace it with the goodwill of all of us coming together. I believe that this state has the skills, has the capacity, the goodwill, the innovation to move towards a circular economy where we can have things flowing in a closed loop system rather than being used once and thrown away. It is a change in orientation. It's not dealing day to day. It's thinking a bit more ahead. That takes energy, it takes goodwill, and it takes what are going to be some challenges we're going to have as we bring all this work together. We will always act swiftly as a government to reinforce and maintain public confidence in recycling, but we all have to play our part in coming together to, as I said, embrace the opportunities by virtue of the national sword policy that has been meted toward us for some time, but is now a reality. So, please enjoy the conference. Do get out, enjoy the beautiful surroundings of Coffs Harbour and the about. It's a pity you can't see it while you're sitting in here, but I can see most of you are dressed much more relaxed and casual fashion than I am today, and that indicates that you are at some point going to take in the wonderful place that you've come to talk to one another, to share in innovation and knowledge. Please bring that to me through the outreach that we'll be doing with you, through our committees that we're going to be setting up. They're going to be nimble and short-dated to work with you towards what we're going to do best together in the future. We are dynamic. We are a great state. We have the solutions. Let's focus on those because an embracing of the opportunity that we have in front of us will mean not only great things for our environment, for the health of our fellow members of community, but it will mean the important things which the government of which I'm a part considers as important, which are increasing employment opportunities, economic benefits across our state and particularly across regional areas. That is something we all want and I believe we can all achieve together. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you and good luck.